welcome to the New Homes podcast. I'm Roz, and today we're going to be talking all about energy efficiency, really focusing in on air source heat pumps. So to do that, I'm joined by Gary from Mitsubishi, air source heat pump manufacturers. You're going to be able to tell me all about the new technology. And we're also welcoming our very own James back to the podcast. So, energy efficiency, it's a huge topic of conversation at the moment. Everyone seems to be talking about it. It's all over the media. And I've actually got a stat that says 3 in 4 UK adults say that buying an energy efficient home is far more important to them now than it was compared to a year ago. I'd be really keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think, with regards to our approach, our homes already are incredibly energy efficient. And there's been some fantastic research done by the HBF recently, which shows new build homes save on average over £3,000 a year.
It's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah. Equally, if you've got a second-hand home and want to make that home as efficient as a new build, you're going to have to go and spend up to £70,000 to retrofit just to get it performing the same way. So with our homes currently, we have got a fabric-first approach, which really there is designed to minimise heat loss. But our intention is to really take that to the next level. And we're looking to install air source heat pumps with underfloor heating as standard on the ground floor throughout all of our future developments.
Yeah, certainly I'd agree. Looking at the way the industry's progressed and the data usage out there now, everyone's got a smart meter, so everyone's monitoring their data and how to improve their energy efficiencies. It's certainly a hot topic at the minute.
It is, especially at home. I think, me and my husband, I'm constantly putting the heating up and then he's constantly putting it down 2 minutes later. So there's definitely an ongoing battle, I think, with some people being particularly hot on it.
Yeah, we have that war in our house as well, I'm afraid, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's something people won't necessarily have thought about to now, and you kind of see the data and see those stats and you really start to think about it in a different way, don't you?
Absolutely, it's a huge amount of money. You think about £3,000 a year, what you could spend that on.
Holiday, great holiday.
Absolutely. So yeah, there's a hot topic in net zero 2050 and currently the UK emissions from heating buildings, about a third of that is from carbon emissions within heating buildings. So improving energy efficiency and reducing your bills is very key at the minute. So yeah, heat pumps play a vital part in that. So it's great to see Redrow, stepping on board and bringing heat pumps into the new build market as one of the early adopters.
Definitely, and thanks for the nice plug there. But yes, we did come out with our announcement recently, and obviously it's been huge. There's been so much coverage, so much conversation about it, and I think people are getting really excited about the prospect of air source heat pumps, which I guess is really why we want to speak about it today, just to understand a bit more about how they work, how the technology kind of comes into the home. So if you could maybe tell us a bit more, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you might have heard of heat pumps working as a fridge in reverse, but who knows how a fridge actually works. So within a fridge, you've got refrigerant at the back of the fridge and that's absorbing all the heat from the food and it's storing it at the back of the fridge. So if you feel the back of your fridge, it's warm. So the heat pump is working in reverse. So what it's doing is it's taking the outdoor air temperature and using that energy and transferring that into hot water for the internal use. So it's for every 1 kilowatt of energy that's put into it, electrical input, you're getting 2 kilowatts free energy out of it. So yeah, that's why they're known as a 300% efficient, because it's using that outdoor air and that free energy to create the heat for the home.
That's fantastic. So not only is it lowering your energy use, but the environmental benefits are fantastic, aren't they?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. So carbon emissions and the carbon footprint from heat pumps is much better than traditional systems. And as the UK transitions towards more green, renewable technology, the solar PV generation of electric, then that's going to, again, improve the carbon reduction for heat pumps usage.
And in the UK, obviously, it still feels fairly new, I guess, in terms of the technology. That isn't necessarily the case elsewhere, though, is it?
No, it's not. So yeah, a lot of European countries are already adopting heat pumps and using those for a lot of their heat source. Certainly at the minute in Germany, a big push towards heat pumps and electrification of heat because of the issues going on with supply and demand for gas. Mm. So yeah, in the UK, we need to really decouple that electric and gas supply at the minute. The electric price is related to gas. And so all these new technologies, these green technologies that are the cheaper form of energy can't be utilised because of that gas link. So yeah, there's a big push at the minute to decouple that gas and electric price.
I see. And that longer term then means that these are not only going to be more energy efficient, but actually going to have huge cost benefits and savings.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a stigma related to heat pumps that because they're using electric is more expensive than gas, therefore heat pumps cost more to run. But actually heat pumps are 300% efficient. So as I said before, for every 1 kilowatt of energy you're putting in, you're getting 2 kilowatts free out. So at the minute with the current energy tariffs, it's cheaper to run a heat pump than a gas boiler.
Well, that's great news. Happy for the planet and good for your pocket,
Absolutely.
tick, tick, isn't it? So in terms of that market, is Germany one of the biggest kind of players for you guys in terms of using air source heat pumps?
Certainly in Europe, Germany is one of the bigger adopters now going forward. The UK, I think, is about 11th in Europe, which is a big jump from where it was. It was pretty much near the bottom. So, the last few years has been a big push due to legislation changes. So, yeah, we've seen a big increase in the UK, which is great for not just the UK, but the overall contribution to climate change.
Yeah.
And James, from an industry point of view, what's changing and why has Redrow kind of decided to make this move now?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, firstly, Roz, our customers tell us that this is what they want from us. This is what they expect. We've carried out research and, the answers were really clear. Second, we want to make sure that we're doing our bit. We've got targets, we've got initiatives that we want to reduce our carbon, and we feel this is a really good step towards doing that. And thirdly, there's also industry legislation. There's changes, and there is a target that by 2025, new homes are going to have to reduce the amount of carbon they produce up to 70%. What we've decided is let's not wait for that. Let's go further and faster today, because we think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So for 2050 is a net zero target, which is a law to get to net zero by 2050. And the way we heat buildings must change now to get to that 2050 target. It's no good waiting until 2049 deciding we need to rip out all the gas boilers and fossil fuel burners. So yeah, it's important that we make those changes now. I think there's a stat that 80% of the buildings that were currently in use will still be in use in 2050. So it's important that all new builds now start to progress towards a greener technology.
That's fantastic, isn't it? And as you say, there's lots going on kind of behind the scenes. So from a customer's perspective, obviously moving into a new home, you have all this future-proof technology and obviously you have the kind of fantastic benefits of energy efficiency. But behind the scenes, there's lots going on, isn't there, in terms of those changes and making sure it's right and obviously having the right partners on board to ensure that rollout's really smooth, isn't it, for customers?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, with any new technology, there'll be teething, concerns, and there's a big skill shortage out there. So, trying to get people upskilled onto the technology will have teething issues. So it's better to do it now while you can learn and develop rather than waiting until you have to and maybe come into issues.
So Redrow are going to be offering the air source heat pumps alongside underfloor heating as standard in the ground floor, which is obviously fantastic. So what are the key benefits that homeowners can enjoy?
Well, I think firstly, there's just fantastic lifestyle benefits to having underfloor heating. Our homes, have got large open plan living areas. And so to have that feature is just, a really lovely sort of quite a luxurious feature to have within a home.
Absolutely.
I think secondly, not having radiators, it can free up some of your furniture layouts, allowing you to place furniture in areas that you maybe haven't previously. So just be a bit more creative as well.
And maybe less tension over whether the heating's been put up 2 degrees or not.
Yeah.
Just another little benefit there. But no, I think the underfloor heating is a really exciting one, isn't it? And something that, works really well, I guess, with the sort of open plan living and the bigger spaces as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. As James mentioned, you get rid of that radiator space, and with heat pumps, because it's a lower ambient temperature, you do need bigger radiators. So with underfloor heating, because it's all throughout the floor, obviously you can run it more efficiently at a lower temperature and still get the heat into the property that you need. That
makes sense. So I guess there is a slight adjustment, I guess, to the way that you use the heating within your property. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, yes. We've got to get away from the mentality of off and on and, wake up in the morning and turn the heating on and turn it off and then go to work and turn it back on when you get back. Heat pumps run most effectively when they are running at a constant temperature. It's a compressor, it's not burning anything, so it's a bit like driving your car. You wouldn't drive your car at 100 mile an hour, then stop, then 100 mile an hour, then stop. You drive it at 50 mile an hour constantly to get the most beneficial efficiencies out of it. So yeah, heat pumps work very similar, that it's better to leave it on and have it ticking over, and your house stays at a temperature, drops down a couple of degrees and tops it up, rather than letting it go cold and then heating it up again. So yes, it saves money and more efficient doing it that way.
Oh, that's good. So you walk in at any point then and no need for kind of loads of layers and slippers, socks and all the rest of it, but you should feel that kind of nice, warm ambient temperature at all times.
Absolutely, yeah. The system set up is 21 degrees. You can adjust that as you need, but it tends to be 21 degrees during the day, 18 overnight, and then just leave it at that. And I've got a heat pump myself, and once you've got it set up and commissioned, you don't have to touch it. You don't have to knock the temperature up and down, so it should just be constantly ticking over at a nice temperature.
Fantastic. And obviously, James, we've had various trials with Redrow customers living in homes with an air source heat pump. And how's that feedback been for them, their kind of experience of it?
Yeah, I think people have really embraced it. We appreciate for the UK, it is a fairly new technology. But what we've heard from customers who have experienced it is that they really wouldn't go back. And they really, really enjoy the benefits that it gives them, as well as obviously the cost savings.
Right. Well, obviously, we've been talking about the fact it's fairly new technology. We've had a lot of questions. So there's quite a few listeners wanting to know a bit more detail and get into the kind of nitty-gritty of living with an air source heat pump. So am I okay just to fire away with a few questions for you?
Absolutely.
So first one, quite a few questions around this, but are they noisy? Is it going to keep me up at night?
There's a stigma related to it that it is noisy, but no, it's not, is a short answer to that. They sit outside and it's a fan whirring away, but you don't hear that fan. And there's planning permissions and things in place where you can't put it next to certain boundaries. So yeah, you won't hear your neighbours and you certainly won't hear yours unless you stood in front of it. And even then, sometimes if you stood in front of it, if there's noise going on in the background, you still won't hear the heat pump running.
So is that similar to what we said with the fridge in terms of that kind of ambient sort of sound that you kind of know is there, but you don't really tune in and listen to?
Yeah, absolutely. You could hear it if you stood next to it listening for it, but if you didn't know it was there,
And we have talked about how people are very obsessive with their energy efficiency. You might get people that are that tuned into it, but for the normal folk, we're fine.
Absolutely, yes. And
Great.
The heat pumps, they're working, harder during winter where you're not sat outside in your garden, and then obviously in the summer when you are sat outside, it shouldn't be running apart from hot water. So
okay, well, I think you've just answered this next question for me, but I'm going to put it to you anyway. Where do they live?
Yes, they tend to live in the back garden under a window. They need a bit of clearance, so what it's doing is it's drawing the air through the back and pushing the air out the front. So that needs to be left open so you can allow that airflow through the unit. So don't block it off, don't put things in front of it. And certainly, yes, out the back garden tends to be the best place for it.
And for anyone listening to the podcast rather than watching it, could you do an audio description for me of what one might look like?
I could blow, but it's basically just, it's a fan. So it's basically a fan in a box. And if you stood in front of it, you would feel the air blowing at you. But yeah, you shouldn't hear it too much. We've developed the products over the years that we've been working with the products to make them more efficient and more aesthetically pleasing. So they are quieter than they were maybe 5-10 years ago.
And then when it comes to servicing, because obviously people are very used to kind of boiler services, does it happen in a similar way? Is it any different?
No, very similar. Yes, there's different components to it than a boiler, but it's a similar service, every year service, and that guarantees the warranty period. So yes, you need to get serviced and checked every year.
And is that with your kind of local installer or with the heat pump manufacturer? How does that work?
So we offer service packages directly with the consumer, or yes, it can go through an installer, just whatever that user preference is.
Great. Okay. I've also got questions around cost. And I know we touched on this a little bit before, but general line is, yes, they are slightly cheaper to run, and this is potentially getting even better in the future.
Yes, certainly. It's a really interesting subject at the minute around energy uses, as we've mentioned earlier. Certainly, at the minute, the tariff is 34 pence a kilowatt hour, but there are flexible tariffs coming in. So, there's charging your car now overnight at a lower tariff. Potentially with a heat pump, you could charge your hot water cylinder overnight at that lower tariff. And then we think the energy usage going forward is really where it's going to get even more intense when there's flexible tariffs come in. We think that it might be every half hour, an hour flexible tariff. And even recently in the news, people were asked to turn certain appliances off and they would get money back. We think that's going to be a really common theme going forward over the next few years.
So it's being quite smart, isn't it, about how you're using it and just be more tuned in, as you say, to when are the best times to be doing that rather than just turning it on just from, whenever you kind of want it.
Absolutely, yeah. And advancements in technology, it's all linked to the smart grid, so you can actually set it up so when those flexible tariffs do kick in, your heat pump automatically kicks in and starts heating your home or heating your hot water for when it is at the lowest tariff.
Great. And how do they actually work? So walk into the home, what do I do to ensure my heat pump's running and kind of all set up?
Yeah, so there'll be two zones, a zone downstairs and a zone upstairs. It's just a thermostat on the wall, very simple, up and down, adjust your temperature up and down. If you're going to leave for the day, we would say don't turn it too far down because you don't want your house to get cold. You want it to constantly keep topping up. So yeah, all you need to do really is adjust that thermostat up and down. We've got lots of homeowner guides that we can share as well to help the users, but it's very simple. And it's one of those, if you don't touch it and you just let it get on with it, it'll work. But you always get someone who thinks, I know how to do this, and maybe fiddles with the settings. So yeah, key is just let it run and let it do its thing.
Great. Okay. And then James, this is one for you. Hopefully everyone's thought that's fantastic. If for nothing more, wanting the underfloor heating, which is certainly on my list. But when are they available and when can we go out and get a Redrow home with an air source heat pump?
Yeah, we've already got several of our developments are now live and selling, where you can go and buy a new home with underfloor heating and an air source heat pump. And for all of our future upcoming developments will be a standard underfloor heating with an air source heat pump.
Thank you so much for taking part, guys. It was a really interesting conversation and really appreciate your time today. And Gary, I believe if we want to find out a little bit more about air source heat pumps, there's somewhere we can go. Yes, we have our own podcast series, serious about sustainability. They look for Mitsubishi Electric, and there's certainly one for the myths around heat pumps and busting those myths and frequently asked questions, so it's worth a listen. Fantastic. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Well, thank you again. And thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe and check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.